And we're going to stay right now in Pittsburgh around the issue of the protests there. Anjali?
Well, thousands of additional security forces have been brought into Pittsburgh ahead of the G20, and tall steel fencing now runs along the convention center in this former steel town. On Tuesday, a federal judge ruled against two protest groups who accused the Pittsburgh police of harassment. Seeds of Peace and Three Rivers Climate Convergence claimed the police used illegal searches, vehicle seizures, raids, and detentions to discourage them from taking part in protests later this week. Seeds of Peace provides medical care and food to protest groups.
Judge Gary Lancaster ruled on Tuesday that the two groups suffered no, quote, irreparable harm, and added he would not stop the city from conducting further searches or detaining members of the groups. Well, we're joined now from Pittsburgh by Jules LaBelle, the Vice President of the Center for Constitutional Rights, also Professor of Law at the University of Pittsburgh, and is representing both groups in court. Welcome to Democracy Now! Jules LaBelle, lay out this issue and what the judge ruled.
Well, what we've witnessed in Pittsburgh over the last week is really systematic repression against a number of these environmental groups and their supporters. The Three Rivers Climate Convergence has been attempting to engage in what they call a sustainability fair to demonstrate that there's an alternative to the economic policies and environmental policies that the G20 countries have put forward. We had to go to court just to get them a permit in Point State Park and then in Schenley Park to engage in that fair. But key to that is an infrastructure where they show that they could provide free meals to people, they can set up demonstration kitchens, and to show that they could really sustain themselves without the use of the environmentally devastating policies. In doing so, they brought in a number of groups. One was Seeds of Peace, which brought in buses from out of town which would cook food and provide these services for their fair. The police have engaged in a clear pattern of harassment, intimidation, really trying to shut this group's operation down. First, they towed their bus on which they use for their cooking and impounded it because they parked apparently more than 12 inches from the curb. If they were to do that for every car and bus that parks more than 12 inches in Pittsburgh, the pounds would be overflowing. Then when they got their bus back, they moved to a place where, with the owner's permission or the tenant's permission, they were able to park off the street and have a whole lot to engage in their activities. The police used massive force with semi-automatic rifles, searching that property, barging in, found nothing. Then they later detained some of the activists who were just walking on the street. They detained them for over an hour, apparently for loitering, and then let them go. Finally, they sent a building inspector and they pressured the owner so that the owner, given this kind of police presence and pressure, said, you have to move. As soon as the groups moved, the police followed them, and within 1 or 2 minutes of getting to the next place where another owner had let them stay in a vacant property, 20 police cars, maybe 40 or 50 policemen with sirens screeching, the lights blaring, dogs barking, jumped up, surrounded the block, blocked off the block, stayed for 2 hours inspecting the bus, and gave them a traffic citation for going onto the curb in order to get into the school property. And apparently they needed some kind of license that they said they didn't have, although they've driven the bus for years without ever having this license. I understand that even after our case was filed and the judge decided it, they moved now to a church on the north side where the police again followed them and harassed them. This is a clear pattern of harassment trying to shut this dissent, these protests, these activities down. And we tried to sue in court. Unfortunately, the judge, I think affected by the G20 activities, by the feeling that he couldn't interfere with police activities, ignored this clear evidence of harassment.
Well, Jules Labelle, I want to thank you for joining us, and we're going to continue to follow what happens with the protests outside the G-20 summit that's taking place in Pittsburgh. Jules Labelle, Vice President of the New York Space Center for Constitutional Rights. He lives in Pittsburgh. He's a professor of law at the University of Pittsburgh. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, President Obama meets with Netanyahu and Abbas, the first such meeting in a year of Netanyahu and Abbas. They met in New York, in the United Nations. President Obama is addressing today. We'll talk about the Israel-Palestine conflict. Stay with us.
بيهدموا ببيوتنا بقتلوا بالأطفال يا فلسطين الأحرار يا غزة الأبطال الصهيوني جاي النهار تراب 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 كلنا عندهم دبابات وإحنا عنا حجار بيهدموا ببيوتنا بقتلوا بالأطفال يا فلسطين الأحرار يا غزة الأبطال الصهيوني جاي النهار تراب 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 يا غزة الدم يا غزة الهم نشاركك أحزانك سنكمل كفاحك فلسطين يا مربى الأسود أرضك لن بد أن تعود يا أبطال المقاومة الفلسطينية بإيمانكم ستشفلون عداء الصهيونية الإرهابية عنصرية الفاشلة يا شهداء غزة الأبرار يا من تحديت العدو على خط النار وحكوا